Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, the Viceroy of Verisimilitude, the master of fun and wonder, the host of Robservations, the show about something, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett, and you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community, I bid you welcome to the 227th episode of this show. You know, some of my favorite comic book series have never run 227 episodes. And we keep going because of you. Because of you, constant watchers. I want to thank you for being here once again on a Saturday. And how much fun are we going to have today? Probably a lot of fun. I'm going to warn you up front, while I admit that both the thumbnail and the headline for this chat is overtly political. And indeed it is, but it's not angry. It's not angry. There's no anger about it. I just received a really interesting letter and decided to make it the topic of this chat. First of all, before I get into it, I would like to just read, I missed a super chat yesterday that was sent in by Movie Finobi, a longtime viewer and member of the Post-Geek Singularity. Movie Finobi says, "Hey, Rob, have you seen Ad Astra yet? Had to bump for work Thursday, seeing it in about 1 hour. Was thinking about you in physical media. Just popped in Newbury." Well, no, Movie. I have not seen that yet. I'm hoping to see it. I got to catch up. I need to see both Rambo and Ad Astra this weekend. I've been doing a lot of work between Tango Shalom and working on the Imaginarium, doing these shows and making a new Living the Lucky Tiger Life podcast or vlog, video cast, whatever you want to call it. I've been so busy, which brings me to the fact that, as always, Robservations is brought to you by Lucky Tiger Men's grooming products for those men who want to look good and feel great. And if you visit their websites, either at clubluckytiger.com or if you go to getluckytiger.com and you order any of their great products, and I do endorse them wholeheartedly, I use them myself, and you punch in PGS for Post-Geek Singularity when you check out, you get 20% off your order. So I wanted to thank them again for making these chats possible. It's good to have them on board. So Movie Finobi asks about Ad Astra. I haven't seen that yet. And I'm hoping to go tonight, and I really want to see Rambo as well. And then Nick Markins sent in a super chat, a very generous super chat. Thank you, Nick. For today's show, even before I sat down to do this, he says, "Hey, Rob, recently heard you talking about a movie called Metropolis. I decided to buy it, but haven't watched it yet. I've never seen a silent movie before. What should I expect? What are your thoughts on the film?" Well, Nick, first of all, let me say you're in for a treat. And I will say this. Watching a silent movie is going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be something you said you haven't done before. So I'm going to ask you something. Do this for me. You need to sort of, I guess, go into a Zen state. And remember, there's probably, I don't know which version of Metropolis you have, but it's a whole different experience. Watching a silent movie is an entirely different experience than watching, obviously, a movie with sound. And remember that for basically the first almost quarter century of filmmaking, of films, even feature films, this is how movies were made. You know, we didn't get sound until the latter half of the 1920s and into the 30s when they were figuring out sound. But the first feature films, basically for the first 10 or 15 years, there was no sound. So movies were silent. And usually, keep in mind that when you went to a theater to see them, there was an organist playing live, would play a music soundtrack live. And you'll notice when you watch a silent film, when people are talking, they usually have interstitial cards that have what people are saying on them. So you are going to be learning an entirely new skill set to watching a film. And I would say at first, it's going to be a little off-putting. You're not going to dig it. It's going to be tough. And I implore you to stick with it, because Metropolis is, even today, one of the greatest science fiction films ever made. And it'll become apparent to you why. It deals with concepts, science fiction concepts we're dealing with even now. You're going to see the ancestor of one of the most famous robots, if not the most famous robot, or one half of one of the most famous robot duos in the history of cinema. You're going to see a distant ancestor of that particular robot. I'm not going to spoil it for you unless you've already had it spoiled for you, but it is one of the most innovative films of the silent era. It's unbelievable. It's one of the first examples of epic science fiction, and indeed the special effects in this movie. I mean, again, it came out in 1927. So, I mean, it's almost, you're looking at a film that, what is that? It makes it 92 years old. And it really is, I would say it's the second major science fiction film. Well, there's a couple of, I guess The Lost World might be one. George Méliès from the A Trip to the Moon, another silent film. There's a couple of silent, but this is basically, this is the most epic science fiction movie of the silent era. And indeed, even today, one of the most epic science fiction films ever made. And I can only say that you, sir, are in for a treat. I wish I could be there watching it with you. I hope you're watching it on a great screen. And I would really like to hear what the experience is like for you. And but I implore you to go in with an open mind and understand that the movie is going to work differently than a movie today works. And it's a skill set. Remember, I talked about how if somebody doesn't know how to read a comic book, you think, why couldn't you read a comic book? There's a lot of people that just don't understand the literal language of sequential artwork and how to read comics. I know it seems silly, but there are people that'll pick up a comic book and they're too intimidated and they'll immediately, their brain sort of shuts off. That might happen to you. And I'm not saying it's because you're dumb. I'm saying it's because you might be initially put off because you haven't experienced it before. By your own admission, you said you've never watched a silent film. I would say this. It's all about the story that's being told. And Metropolis tells a very compelling story that is very relevant even to sci-fi of the day. And I think you're going to have a great time watching it because it's an interesting artifact. It's a beautiful film, and the technology on display from 100 years ago, it's pretty amazing. And Fritz Lang is, of course, not just one of the great directors of the silent era, he's one of the greatest directors that's ever worked in cinema. So you're really going back to Hollywood history, and I hope you give it a chance and let it sort of wash over you. But please report back when you've seen it. I'd love to hear what you think. Maybe write a letter. For those of you who want to, remember the Burnettwork.net, our adjacent website that has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content on it. The brainchild of our moderator, Mr. Mike, the Honorable Mr. Michael Bodden, the mayor of Riverdale, Iowa. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I love saying that one of our moderators is the mayor of an American town, which is amazing. But, you know, he works really hard to keep the website up to date. And you can send me, of course, letters to the website. Most of the letters that I read here are indeed on the website. You can comment on them. You can be interactive on the website. If you have a 3-word movie review, we love it there. We love to hear your 3-word movie reviews. There's the Imagination Connoisseur Gallery. If you have something cool you want to share, whether it's a tattoo, whether it's an action figure collection, whether it's a model of the SDF-1 you built out of cardboard that I'm seeing pictures of on the internet, which is pretty cool. Whatever it is, share it. Go to the Burnettwork.net website. And again, I'm still being inundated with people who want to buy Robservations t-shirts and swag. And that was something I hadn't been promoting. I forgot that I set it up. But there are links on the website you can find and on yesterday's chat as well. It's at TeePublic, TeeFury, I forget. I don't even remember where my own website is. But I did throw up a Space Rob t-shirt, a still of Space Rob. You can get a Space Rob t-shirt. People have been buying them. And I really recommend their hoodies. I think the hoodies are really, really good. I really like their t-shirts as well. And I'm going to start putting more designs up just for fun. Elizabeth has a few designs that I'm going to put on t-shirts as well. And for those of you who might not know, but there's a Pasadena Art Walk here in Pasadena next month. I think it's on the second Saturday of the month. Elizabeth is going to be displaying. She was chosen, so she will be displaying her paintings in downtown Pasadena at the Art Walk. I will probably be there, and if I can get on the internet, I'll do a live Robservations episode, a Robservation Nation episode from there. So anyway, one of the great things about this show for me has been the unexpected, I would say mutation, because I've been thinking about the X-Men a lot, but the evolution of Robservations. And at first I was going to sit down and, tell my stories and pontificate and be geeky and people like that. I still haven't gone past the letter G as far as my favorite offbeat movies from my collection go. But what happened is, over the course of me doing these chats, is the feedback that I've been getting, the back and forth with you guys, the Imagination Connoisseur community, you members that make up the Post-Geek Singularity here, has been great. And it's been fun. I mean, there's a lot of people that just like it when I talk. And that's cool, but I would have run out of things to say a long time ago. I mean, as entertaining as I am, I can only listen to myself for so long before I want to stick a Type 2 phaser in my mouth and disintegrate the back of my head. Not unlike never mind, I won't get into that. But I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But it's really been interesting. And what I particularly love is when I read someone's letter or I'm going off about something, I love getting the feedback that comes back to me, because I'm always interested in that feedback and what people have to say. And obviously I did two stories. I did two shows about the Walter Mosley situation with Star Trek Discovery. If you don't know about the Walter Mosley situation and his op-ed in the New York Times, Walter Mosley is one of America's great novelists. He is a biracial man. He was the son of a Russian Jewish mother and a black father. And he was the creator of the Easy Rawlins novels, beginning with Devil in a Blue Dress, that was later adapted by director Carl Franklin, who I love, starring Denzel Washington and Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle's portrayal of Mouse, amazing. If you haven't seen Don Cheadle, if you've only seen Don Cheadle as War Machine, go back and watch Devil in the Blue Dress, because his portrayal is amazing. So I did 2 episodes about that situation. And I received a really interesting letter that sort of addresses that situation from a Hollywood perspective, from a biracial man, that I would like to share with the community. And one of the things, everyone's always telling me, we don't want to hear you talk about politics and all that. But I do think that politics is one of the great topics of stories. I love political stories. I mean, my beloved Gladiator is nothing if not a political movie. I love, the Parallax View, the great 70s conspiracy thrillers, whether it's 3 Days of the Condor, the Parallax View, or based on a real ripped out of the headline story, or headline story itself, All the President's Men. I've always loved political stories. The X-Files is all about politics. And I have never felt that politics was something we should shy away from talking about. But I understand right now it's hard, because then everybody ends up in a shouting match. But to me, I don't understand why you can't listen to someone's political ideology and respond or consider it without getting angry. So I don't have a problem with it, but I don't make things overtly political. The Walter Mosley situation, I think, is inherently political. And I received a great letter about that, about what I had to say from a new member of the community, which I thought was even better. I love it when people find me and they come and watch the show and subscribe, and it's great that we're building. The Post-Geek Singularity is getting bigger by the day, and there's more Imagination Connoisseurs coming to the channel every day, and I think that's terrific. But that said, one of the things I love about this channel, and the whole reason that I wanted to start it in the first place, and I've said this before, but when I moved to Los Angeles in the late 80s and began working in the industry in the late 80s and early 90s, I started most of my circle of friends and acquaintances and the people that I know, I met them doing various Imagination Connoisseur events, going to conventions, going to screenings, going to various film-related events in and around Hollywood. And eventually, and at the same time, I was also working in the industry. So sometimes I met people working in the industry. I met, for instance, Dave Parker through the Academy of Science Fiction, Horror and Fantasy Films, that recently put on their I think the 41st Saturn Awards. I've won 3 myself. But I met Dave, and then we worked together at Full Moon. where we also work with Dan Schweiger, who I met standing in line on the Sony lot to see Jacob's Ladder. So my entire career in Hollywood and the entertainment industry has also been spent meeting people that I've watched ascend to great heights within the industry, which has been a lot of fun. And it was sharing our enthusiasm as friends that kept us going. And sometimes I've had the great privilege of working with friends of mine and working with people that I admire greatly, and either as equals, as colleagues, or I'd worked for my friends who are much more successful than I'll probably ever be. But it was our shared enthusiasm for all of those things that imagination connoisseurs are enthusiastic about that fueled our professional, the striving that you must always do to become successful, or at least be a journeyman and a working professional in the entertainment business, because it's a hard, long road. It's a long road getting from there to here, as someone once sang, both in Patch Adams and in Star Trek. So and that's kind of what I wanted to do with this show. I don't have, people are too busy. They've got kids. We can't hang out at Lola's on Sunday nights and drink and eat macaroni and cheese and all of those things we did as younger folks. So my solution was to start doing these shows and build a new community of new people. And I've been surprised, a community around the world. So give yourselves a hand. And it's great to have this community. But that said, I do like sometimes to delve into interesting issues. And one of the things that I've found interesting about I don't know, the last 5 or 10 years is all of this talk about identity politics and social justice warriors and all of that. It's, of course, online. It's been an ongoing firestorm, and same in the genre community. I mean, a few flashpoints, whether it was recently Brie Larson, Captain Marvel, of course, The Last Jedi. Before that, you had Gamergate, the sad and rabid puppies thing with the Hugo Awards. But what's so funny to me is I've always believed that being a fan of science fiction, fantasy, or horror, and specifically things like Star Trek or Star Wars, that inherently you believe in social justice for people that have been marginalized or downtrodden, or people that hadn't had voices, they hadn't been heard, or you had groups of people that were just marginalized in a society, whether it's ethnic groups or people with certain religious beliefs or sexualities. There just aren't that many of them. You know, if you look at the percentage of different racial demographics in the United States, there is one predominant racial demographic. It's changing, obviously. But so there was a lot of other racial demographics that didn't have the voice certain racial demographics do. And I've always believed that the best thing about diversity, it's not about, we don't want diversity superficially. We want the stories, and we want the understanding of all the different kinds of groups that are here that form the foundations of our culture. And those foundations, by the way, are always in flux, especially today. Now that you can get on a plane and fly across the planet in a couple hours, not in a couple hours, 14 hours. I mean, I used to marvel when I was working on, whether it's Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, or Superman Returns, I went to Australia and New Zealand a lot. And flying back and forth, I'd leave, I'd leave at midnight. I'd land at like 6:30 in the morning at Sydney Airport, and I would be at work at 8 o'clock at Fox Studios Sydney on Superman Returns. And I'm like, wow, the world is a very small place. And there's all kinds of people all over the place, and it's worth hearing their stories. And so I've always been a fan of meeting new people, and of all shapes, sizes, colors, creeds, whatever they are, belief systems. I've always thought that was neat. And I've always felt like, wow, every time, I always say, everyone has a story to tell that you haven't heard. All you have to do is listen. And all that is going to do is make the stories that we're telling each other more interesting. And I also believe, though, that you cannot trade one oppression for another. And it's been really interesting watching my own, being a middle-aged white dude, I have now become the villain. I guess, Batman, The Dark Knight, really, or maybe you're just going to live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Well, I have. And it's been interesting. I find it all very interesting. And I really like, I think all stories are inherently political. Some of my favorite things, whether it's Howard Chaykin's American Flag or comic books, the X-Men, Captain America, Watchmen, of course, The Boys now on TV in the book. Half of Grant Morrison's output has been political. Actually, all of it's been political. Garth Ennis, same thing. So I've always enjoyed all that. Now, that said, it's been very interesting to hear people come back at me when I bring up these issues. And here is a really interesting letter that is in response to what I was saying about what was going on with Walter Mosley. And I'm not going to explain what happened. Go look at Walter Mosley's op-ed he wrote for the New York Times. He was later interviewed on MSNBC. And of course, there's an article in the Hollywood Reporter about Walter Mosley and Star Trek Discovery and what happened there. I suggest you go read all that. But this is a new letter, a new letter. It is a new letter, but it's from a new imagination connoisseur, member of the community named Corey Drayton. And Corey writes, well, I'm just gonna, you know what? I'm just gonna read it. And this again, Corey Drayton, a new member of the Post-Geek Singularity community, sends this. Greetings and salutations, Robert. Recently, I discovered your channel, and I've been thoroughly enjoying your content. While I do find myself in passionate agreement and vehement opposition to your analysis in equal measure, I greatly value your commitment to independent thought and mutual courtesy in the face of disagreement. You bring a degree of class that is sorely needed in the spicy discourse of geek culture. I love that. Spicy discourse of geek culture. To be open-minded has long been a principal virtue in the community of imagination connoisseurs. I swear to God, I did not write that opening paragraph, but it endears Corey to me forever. Before the story slips into cryosleep, I wanted to offer a comment on the Walter Mosley revelation. Having read and enjoyed his work for many years, the incident struck a personal nerve for me. He and I share a very similar background. I am biracial, part black, white, and of German Jewish stock, and have experienced my own share of peculiarities in the industry pursuant to this growing trend of social justice, identity politics manifested in HR. I feel compelled to push back somewhat on the degree to which social justice ideology is downplayed as a concerning influence in the industry, meaning the entertainment industry. By way of empirical evidence, I can offer mere anecdotes, which I hope will lend some credence to the argument. I wanted to share this with you because you have repeatedly demonstrated that you are open to many points of view and have a keen mind for analysis. I think I can count on you for the straight dope. I have been a professional in the industry since 2005. My focus and training primarily in the camera department. I worked my way up as a camera production assistant, second assistant camera, first assistant camera, steady cam operator, and have been a DP for the last 9 years. I hold a BA, a BFA, and an MFA from reputable film schools, and I am one of a handful in my market who trained on 16 millimeter and 35 millimeter film, Super 16, I should say. I was among the first to train on the Red 1 and routinely work with both Red and Arri Alexa camera systems. Shameless credentialism aside, I can point to a demarcation point wherein identity politics influencing hiring decisions manifested in my career. I had relocated to the Pacific Northwest, shifting my focus from features, documentaries, and television to commercials. Up to 2015, I could reliably count on my merits as a technician to win a bid. Around 2016, I noticed a sharp decline in work from agencies with whom I had long established relationships. The few calls that did come in were chiefly for diversity-related content. Essentially, if the need for diversity and representation on the crew was mandated for a given project, I was in consideration. If the project was targeting a more mainstream segment of the market, I was suddenly not the right cultural fit. Essentially, I had been relegated to a diversity hire to be trotted out when it was politically expedient for the agency in question. My technical skills, my experience, my education, all secondary and tertiary considerations to the degree of melanin in my skin, diversity, or tokenism. Further, in my market, it has become standard practice to cast minorities in front of the camera, while crew positions remain largely filled by non-minorities. Disclaimer: I am neither advocating interventionism, nor do I think that my minority status should entitle me to advantage. I think the jobs should go to the best qualified, and market demographics regarding technicians do support a reasonable assumption that most of those qualified will not be minorities. My point is, rank hypocrisy in hiring appears to be de rigueur to the professed social justice ideology so pronounced in the HR departments of many agencies. I'm aware that this is by no means an argument. It's a simple observation. This race-conscious bifurcation in hiring has led to an on-set dynamic none too dissimilar from the predatory nature of a minstrel show. To wit, I have witnessed articulate, mainstream-sounding black talent being encouraged to black it up for the camera, cultivating a more culturally authentic presentation for the client. This occurs at the hands of people who profess a social justice mindset. Now, I'm entering the realm of speculation, but here is my assessment. Within the identity politics component of social justice ideology, there is an a priori assumption that persons of color came from a prescribed set of disadvantaged circumstances. Thus, it is assumed there is always a competence gap between candidates of color and whites. Exception to this, a priori assumption, such as myself, represent a direct threat to the critical race theory component of social justice. I came from a wealthy family, was raised and educated in Europe, and speak 4 languages. I do not come from the standard ghetto background projected onto many in the US who share my skin tone. I have been routinely grilled by clients and agencies over my qualifications. My resume and show reel have been routinely cast in doubt. I have been asked for degrees of verification that most would find degrading. I have been frequently ghosted in the bidding process. In some cases, my creative pitches stolen by agencies and given to others to execute. Now, I do concede that there is a degree to which some of these experiences are routine in the industry. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. I take that as an axiom, and indeed it is. Nevertheless, when I compare notes with my white colleagues, I met with astonishment that such practices could be occurring. We are clearly having different experiences of the market. I never encountered anything like this before, the proliferation of social justice in our industry. I want to stress that while I can't prove causation, I am confident that there is a correlation based on the critical race theory framework within social justice. I can distinctly recall that during my time at university in the late 90s and early noughties, postmodernism, Marxist critical theory, and intersectional theory were the primary tools used to deconstruct art. Studies of film history and art history were largely vehicles for proliferation of the Marxist intersectional theory of individuals like Laura Mulvey and Bell Hooks. This would have been fine if counter-arguments had been presented and debate had been encouraged. That was not the case. Intersectionality as orthodoxy was the order of the day. It wasn't long before the same tools of analysis were applied to everything beyond art, socioeconomics, the soft sciences, etc. People educated in this fashion have since become the HR professionals that populate many of the agencies. My business evaporated over the ensuing years. I've kept it on life support, expanded my offering and services. Hell for leather, I networked, trusting that face-to-face interaction would demonstrate that I am indeed competent, dare I say, clean. It was all in vain. In November of 2018, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer at 36. The physical realities of cancer treatment has forced me to let camera department go for the time being, and as such have placed me in a position to better observe this trend in the industry and formulate a riposte. Owing to fears of career self-detonation, were I to speak publicly about these experiences, cancer has a way of putting things in perspective. I no longer fear the repercussions of speaking out. I've since shifted my focus to writing and brand development, expecting to meet much of the same ideological flack as heretofore outlined. That won't stop me from showing up and doing the work. I hope that I will be able to regain lost ground in some capacity. Time will tell. Inasmuch as I yearn for the greater commitment to merit I enjoyed in the days gone by, this is only one man's experience. I will not claim to have objectivity on this particular issue. Sharing this may encourage others to sound their yawp over the rooftops of the world, as Mr. Mosley's recent op-ed has for me. Thank you for lending your time and consideration. The consideration you offer to reading letters from listeners is appreciated. Here's looking forward to your remarks, and I hope this can do good for others in the industry. Live long and prosper. CD. Well, listen, I have to say, Corey, I thought this was a fantastic letter. And again, it reiterates to me, I'll tell you my own story. I've told this before, but it was maybe about a year and a half ago. I was on Twitter talking about how it was really nice to see more diversity at the top when it comes to directing larger tentpole movies in Hollywood. People like F. Gary Gray and, of course, Ryan Coogler, and seeing Patty Jenkins, who directed Wonder Woman, that you're seeing more people of color and women directing large budget, tentpole films. And I think that's a great idea. And I was saying that again, when you have different perspectives, different upbringings, different experiences of the world, when those experiences are allowed to sort of seep out into the larger world through giant tentpole movies, that can only be a good thing. And I think that that's why I'm a fan of diversity, because the stories, because I'm obviously a fan of stories, that's sort of my thing, whether it's on television, whether it's in books or in movies and comics or whatever, the more differing backgrounds and the different experiences that we have from our storytellers, the more interesting stories are going to be. And I think that can only be a good thing. And on one hand, when I think about social justice or the idea that marginalized voices should be given a platform, I'm always bravo, here. However, it shouldn't be done at the expense of replacing decent voices that we already have. I want to hear from them too. For instance, my beloved Stephen King. I would hate it if someone said, "Oh, we're tired of hearing from an old white man in his 70s. Let someone else be the new Stephen King? Let a transgendered person of color be the new Stephen King simply because they're a transgendered person of color, and let's marginalize Mr. King." Well, no, I would like to hear a transgendered person of color writing science fiction, fantasy, and horror that I dig, because I think that would be interesting. I would love to hear what kind of story would that kind of background bring us. I often talk about one of my favorite YouTubers, Natalie Wynn, ContraPoints, who's a trans woman who has even detailed her transition on YouTube. Fearlessly, I might add. And I really appreciate the technical prowess she shows in the creation of her videos. I really like them. I talked about how I watched Karen Strawn another YouTuber I've watched who's a men's rights advocate, go after Melanie Wynn on YouTube the other day. Interesting, sort of disheartening for me, because I was fans of both women, and watching one go after another I was like, huh. But anyway, I've always thought those are good things. And unfortunately, what's happening is it's only a certain kind of just social justice people want. It's only a certain narrative. And as Corey pointed out, this idea that all people of color, everybody is downtrodden and everybody was oppressed. And that's not always true. I almost think that's a very American narrative. I don't know if that's the case, but it seems to be, because, if you certainly travel to different countries around the world, depending on which country you're at, there were different people doing the oppressing. The Japanese, what they did to the Chinese, I've talked about that in World War II, for instance. How does that fit into the social justice narrative we're telling each other here in America? I mean, I've spent 10 days in South Korea last year. I didn't know much about Korea. I certainly didn't know much about the Korean War. I didn't understand that basically it was the Koreans. It was basically a civil war, and it was a civil war. Different ideologies, communism, and of course it's the old standby. And I didn't know much about it, and to find out more about it, I was like, wow. And whatever American agenda we might have had there, it still ultimately was a civil war amongst the Korean people, and it was interesting. And when you travel around the world and you see different perspectives, and you go places where white cis males really don't have much to say, when you go into certain Asian nations, and it's very interesting when you come back to America, and we're of course the root of all the world's problems now. And indeed, let's face it, we pretty much have been for a long time, but so have other people. And I think what's great about this particular letter is we're showing that not all social justice is necessarily, while people mean well, the 20th century is littered with ideologies that began as a way of hopefully making people rise up and finding the kind of equality and speaking for the everyman, and it descends into the worst possible despotic tyranny that left millions and millions and millions dead throughout the 20th century. So really, I love Star Trek and Star Wars. If it is nothing, if especially Star Trek is all about social justice. It's about bringing justice to all peoples throughout the universe. So I've always loved it. I've always loved the idea that let's help people. Something, and isn't that better? City on the Edge of Forever. Let me help. Those were words that were recommended over I love you, as Kirk was telling Edith Keeler. And I think that's the best way to be, to help each other out, basically to help each other find what it is. What is it we want to do? What is it that we can do? And we should all be helping one another to do those very things. And I've been lucky in the sense that I've lived in a world. I have friends of color. I have friends that are gay. I've got female friends. And one of the great things about living where I live and the people that I've known is there has been a camaraderie amongst everyone, watching people succeed and moving through their careers. I found Hollywood, where a lot of people are always talking shit about Hollywood. I found Hollywood actually to be the exact opposite, to be, as much as it makes me want to pull my teeth out with pliers and to try and get projects made, the people that I know, I admire many of them greatly, and watching their careers develop and flourish over the years, over the past couple of decades, 3 decades really, has been quite inspiring. And I think that, yes, there has been a change, that there is a darkness that has descended over all of this, but it is a darkness that is I think born out of the desire to do well or to do right by people. Unfortunately, not necessarily in the right way, as we saw with the Walter Mosley situation. If you're selling out your fellow man or woman or your fellow human being, in the desire to do some kind of social justice, if the concepts that you're fighting for suddenly become more important than the people or your colleagues, then it's not being done correctly. And that's kind of how I thought about it. And that's why I found the Walter Mosley situation very interesting. But I want to thank Corey for your letter. I very much appreciate you sharing your experience. What do you guys think? Please answer in the chat below this video, or of course, you can discuss it at the Burnettwork.net website and send me a letter. Jordy54. asks thoughts on Disney pushing out independent films. Well, Disney's never been a paragon of indie cinema. But look, they did buy Fox Searchlight as part of Fox. They're allowing Fox Searchlight to put out movies like Ford versus Ferrari. So that not necessarily independent cinema per se, but I think, look, I don't think when you're talking about Disney pushing independent cinema out, I think independent cinema is incredibly vibrant right now. Some of the streaming services, well, Netflix and Amazon, I mean, they're making movies like Manchester by the Sea. You've got incredible distributors like A24, Blumhouse. I mean, remember, even though Jason Blum, which bothers me when he says this, I mean, Jason Blum and Blumhouse made Whiplash, which got J.K. Simmons an Academy Award. Now, Jason Blum has gone on record many times saying, well, I would never make Whiplash again because it made no money. I get that. I understand, but I think with a better marketing team, maybe it might have. Maybe a different release strategy, it might have. I don't know. But I think independent cinema is incredibly vibrant right now. And while it might not be getting the theatrical numbers that it used to, look at a guy like Quentin Tarantino, who's essentially still, even though Sony released his new movie, Quentin Tarantino is still an indie filmmaker at heart, and the studios are releasing his movies. I mean, the major studios are they're going to be making spectacle entertainments. That's what they're doing. The mid-range adult fare is going away, although it might be coming back depending on what's successful and what isn't. Even though it's a Fox film and Disney had to release it, Ad Astra, an adult, basically an adult contemplative science fiction film, at least from what I understand. I haven't seen it yet. Hopefully I'm going to go tonight. That came out pretty amazing. And then, all these movies that you're seeing that are dropping all over the place on streaming services and then distributors like A24, I think independent cinema is vibrant. I hope so, because as many people know, we're in the finishing stages of Tango Shalom, a movie I've been working on for 3 years, which defines indie cinema. There's nothing about Tango Shalom that isn't indie, and I'm, as a producer on it, the editor on it, and the post supervisor on it, I've worked very, very hard on an indie movie like Tango Shalom. I hope it gets out there. Now, I don't think it's going to do Avengers Endgame numbers. As a matter of fact, I don't think it's going to make as much as the concession stand in one theater that played Endgame, but still very proud of it. It'll get out into the world. And I don't think Disney's pushing out. Remember, Disney's only going to be releasing 8 movies a year, and those movies all might make $1 billion each. But you know what successful movies do? At least they've always done in my mind. They make people excited about movies in general. And I think people inherently love movies. And when they go see one movie that turns them on, that they feel is good, that they had a great experience with, that means they want to go do it again. I think, to me, movies have probably been my crack cocaine. When I see great movies, it just makes me want to snort another fatty rail. I just want to hoover up those movies, man. Let me keep chopping up that celluloid and sniffing it right into my brain. Bring it on. So, when Disney provides great entertainment, whether it's Lion King, whether it's Aladdin, no one thought Aladdin was going to do any business. People were dubious about it, and it made $1 billion. Disney, through their movies, they're making great films on a certain level. It's so funny. Their job is to provide great entertainment. George Lucas wasn't making more Star Wars movies. Disney bought Star Wars, and now they've put out 4 Star Wars movies. They're putting out The Mandalorian. We've got The Rise of Skywalker coming out. Now, you know what? In 10 years, we'll see where Disney Star Wars has gone. But the fact the Clone Wars is coming back, Resistance is coming back, people like Dave Filoni, who everybody loves, it's very funny. Kathleen Kennedy, who I think is one of the most admirable people in Hollywood, especially as a producer, watching people slag off on her is just, it's science fiction to me. I look at it, I'm like, really? Watching a producer like Kathleen Kennedy being made fun of by the genre community, by us, we imagination connoisseurs, anybody who slams her, I'm like, the woman got her first producing credit on E.T. But then again, I read articles. I read an article on this show where somebody slammed E.T., which to me is insane. But there we're at. That's where we're at. But anyway, I don't think Disney's pushing out independent movies. I think independent movies have more venues than ever before. Certainly low budget horror might not because we don't have the drive-ins, but hey, A24. Willow Yang says, speaking of silent film, have you seen The Artist? Of course. Won Best Picture. I took my dad to it. He was so confused about why I wanted to watch an old people's film. Again, yes, silent movies. Most people now, watching a silent movie is a skill, just like watching a movie is a skill. You have to learn how to watch a film. You have to learn how to understand how narrative unfolds. Film, you have to be literate, just like a book. It's not even enough to know how to read. You have to be literate. I've said there's a lot of people who know how to read, but there are less people that are literate. And you need to know. People don't. That's why I said watching Metropolis will be a great joy, but you got to sit down and let it flow over you. If you've never watched a silent movie ever in your life, you're gonna have to work at it. You're gonna have to work at watching a silent film. You're gonna have to work. Jordy54 says, "Love your take on theaters running more ads." Well, here's the thing. I'm lucky that I live in Hollywood, and we have a premium theater chain called the ArcLight that's spread out. It's in a few other places around the country. Mostly it's in Hollywood and California, Southern California. The ArcLight shows 3 trailers before a movie. Now, here's the thing. It's just like when I'm going out to a nice dinner, and one of my favorite meal, my favorite dinner is a little surf and turf. I want to have a nice filet mignon and hopefully not just a lobster tail, but, a whole lobster. That's my favorite meal. Lobster, surf and turf, maybe a little nice clam chowder, New England clam chowder, not Manhattan clam chowder, New England clam chowder as an appetizer. But here's the thing. I don't want to eat too much clam chowder because I don't want to interfere with the joy of the meal that I'm having. I don't want it, to pour that drawn butter over that lobster tail, to eat the lobster and then go back to the filet with maybe a nice peppercorn sauce on it. And those wonderful tastes, the sensuality of having a nice Syrah, perhaps, with that surf and turf. Or I'll even go against the grain. I won't have red wine with meat. I'll have a nice white. I just like wine, but I like to begin with a nice cocktail. Like I'll start my dinner with a double Jameson rocks, or if there's an extensive whiskey list, I'll go for some premium liquor and then downshift to wine. It's a whole sensual experience. Too many things before the movie ruin it for me. I don't want to see, I'll tell you something. Lionsgate, God bless them, on their home entertainment releases, on their Blu-ray releases, usually, for the most part, have 5 trailers before the movie. Now, you can skip through them, so it's fine. But I wouldn't want to see, I don't like to see 5 trailers maybe is the threshold. But I really like the ArcLight, no more than 3 trailers. I like that. 3 trailers are like a drink, and they're like a cocktail and a bowl of clam chowder for me. More than that, you're taking away from the experience of the movie. I like the fact that you sit. To me, movies are my churches. I like looking around. I like being in a great movie theater. I like looking around the ArcLight, even in their smaller screens, they have really high ceilings. I like looking and feeling like I take in the ambiance. I like watching the audience come in and sit down, kind of see who I'm sitting next to or who's around me, observe them. They're talking and trying to overhear their conversations and wondering how excited are they? Are they as excited as I am to be there? And then I don't like when they play ads. The ArcLight doesn't play any ads. You go even to AMC's, I get it. Ads cost, they pay the bills. I understand that, but I don't like, to me, watching commercials, especially commercials that are clearly not shot. Like, it used to bother me when they'd still play standard def commercials in a movie theater. I'm like, you're not even showing me the proper resolution. It would bother me. So to me, it's like, I want to see 3 trailers and that's it. Because that's enough. Because I don't want the experience. I've gone to see a specific movie. I've anticipated what that movie's going to be like. And I don't want anybody interfering in that. And too much audio-visual information beforehand bothers me. I like to get into my zen movie-going space. I like to have my popcorn situated the way I want it. I want to have, I want to have enough of that chemical burn from my Diet Coke where I've drank just enough of it, but not too much, so I can parcel out the rest of the day. I've got this whole like internal monologue with myself and this ritualistic behavior that only I'm aware of when I go to the movie theater, and it doesn't involve watching what's on the screen. I want to start, and then I want the lights to come down. Now, in a good movie theater, the lights don't go all the way down when the trailers are playing because I know people are walking in. And even then, I like when people walk in when the trailers start playing because I can judge them. I'm like, I don't like you. You weren't as excited enough to see this movie and get here to have that same experience where you can anticipate the next movies that are coming out through the trailers. I'm so judgmental. I'm kidding. It doesn't really bother me, but I do judge. So if there's too much going on before the movie starts, it harshes my movie mellow. I don't like my movie mellow to be harshed, And for those who don't understand it, like the word mellow, once I don't know who said it to me. I did not come up with this. Somebody told me the term once years ago. Harsh my mellow. Like you have a great mellow going, whatever. It's like being zen or whatever, and someone harshes that mellow through their behavior or actions, or you get a phone call or somebody around you starts talking. So I don't like when my mellow is harshed, my movie mellow. So there you go. I don't like theaters running too many ads. Man Mountain Gherkin 23 says top 10 Star Trek characters. Number 1, Picard. Number 2, Spock. OG. You don't have to say OG. There's only one Spock. Number 3, Data. Number 4, Kirk. Number 5, McCoy. You say McCoy old and new and Scotty old and new? No. But okay, McCoy old and new. Number 6, Scotty old and new. 7, the holographic doctor. 8, Riker. 9 is Odo, and 10 is Worf. So I should wear my glasses all the time. 9, that's a good list. Very respectable list. I like that list, Man Mountain Gherkin. Good on you for that. That is a fine, respectable list. Magic K says, what if Sandman producer contacts you to get you to direct and write an episode for them? What kind of plot would it be? Dude, first of all, it would be an ultimate dream of mine to direct an episode of The Sandman, but I want them to adapt the series. I think, look, if I was I've thought about this since the late 80s when Sandman debuted. The Sandman is my favorite comic book series ever. Neil Gaiman, 75 issues and then a couple of offshoots, already laid out the Sandman story. They should just do those issues. Now, some of them they're going to have to change around, especially the first 8 episodes of Sandman. I mean, I have very, very, very distinct and very specific ideas about how I would approach a Sandman show. And the first 7 issues of Sandman are interesting because it's kind of finding its way. Now, you could still do the first issue of Sandman and then do the first story. You kind of have to, where the Sandman goes to hell, and then the whole thing with Dr. Destiny and all that. You really could adapt the whole series. It'd be difficult. It'd be difficult to do because there's episodes where, like Dream of a Thousand Cats, where the Sandman appears as a cat. And you have cats, and the Sandman, I would just do the series. But if I could direct, actually, you know what? I wouldn't. I can't say that I would direct one of the Shakespeare episodes because it would require me. My chops are not up. But if I could direct one episode of Sandman, I would do The Sound of Her Wings. I would do issue 8, where death is introduced. You know what? If I could direct one more thing in my life, and then I would hang up my directing aspirations, it would be that issue. If I could direct the issue 8 of Sandman, The Sound of Her Wings, where death is introduced, and if I was able to be in on casting death. And no, I don't know who I would cast as death, but that I could end my life. I think that would be great. Man Mountain Gherkin 23 says, I am a Christian who dislikes Christian movies. However, the 1970s Jesus of Nazareth miniseries has acting that impresses me and high production value. You know what? I got to tell you, I like the Jesus of Nazareth miniseries. I thought it was great. I think, again, most Christian movies, well, for the most part, they violate the Burnett axiom, which is never put your universe before your story and characters. I think it's the same thing. Never put, universe, just never put your religion before your stories and your characters. You got to tell a great story with great characters first. And you can imbue that story and those characters with Christian values. And then it becomes, I think, great. The Jesus of Nazareth miniseries. I mean, I find the story of Christ fascinating. I don't understand why anybody wouldn't want to delve into Christ's life. What's really interesting is there's always an agenda-based story about that. Look, I loved Passion of the Christ. That was a rough watch. But it was, and it was also, people talked about how it could have been looked at as being anti-Semitic. I didn't see it that way. And then also, I just think that, I like religious stories. I love delving into them all. But there's just a way to do them. If they're overly preachy, I find that religious stories, too, are overly preachy to us today now. But if you really want to go and adapt the Bible and delve into, there's great stories there. I don't know if I'd love to see like the definitive, if I could make a movie, I'd love to retell the story of Job in sort of the modern day, or I would love to go make C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters, or the riff that Clive Barker did, the Yattering and Jack. But I think that could be really, really interesting. But I can understand why you're a Christian who dislikes Christian movies, because the movies aren't good. I think you could make great movies that have definitely Christian values inherent in them. I also watch movies that, I don't know how a true Christian would feel about this, but I look at movies like The Shawshank Redemption, seems to me, not just because it has the word redemption in it, but because it seems to me to be a film that Christians would appreciate the message of it. What I find interesting is you can't show like the real horrors of things. Hacksaw Ridge. There's a movie I would say is a Christian film, But by the way, Alexander Wilson is back. Hello, Alexander. I haven't seen you in a while. Thank you very much, by the way, for supporting the channel. Alexander Wilson says, I can relate to the letter. There have been so many companies that have been sued and settled for their racial discrimination hiring process. I was part of a group that received a settlement for racial discrimination hiring. Really? That's fascinating. Well, I know that you can have that. You can have insight into this that I couldn't have, but that's very interesting. Swag Props. Cal's here. Swag Props. By the way, if you guys haven't looked, every Swag Props, man, I got to give Cal once again. He put pictures. For those of you who don't know, Swag Props Cal, he's an old school member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. When I looked into his props and I found out he made a prop replica of the 9 gates from the movie The Ninth Gate, and by the way, he sent me one out of the goodness of his heart. His work is amazing, but if you look up his Etsy store, you've got to check out his Henry Jones. He made a Grail diary, Henry Jones's Grail diary from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. That's insane. If you're going to buy a prop replica, if you know somebody who's an Indiana Jones fan, now I understand it's not like the prop that was actually used in the movie, but it's better because it's better. It's more like it's like it's real. It's amazing. Check out Swag Props. He's in Malaysia, but he has an Etsy store. Swag Props says, heard Best Movies Never Made, the podcast about Free Enterprise 2, The Wrath of Shatner. Hope to see it in the near future. Sounds epic. Well, thank you for saying so. Yes, I was on a podcast called Best Movies Never Made with Mark Altman and Steven Scarlatta, who was one of the producers of the Jodorowsky's Dune documentary, is one of the guys that does this podcast. And we talked about Free Enterprise 2. I would love to make Free Enterprise 2. I would love to get, if I could, buy the rights back to Free Enterprise and make a new 4K version of it, do my Final Frontier cut, and then maybe go back and try and raise the money to make Free Enterprise 2, The Wrath of Shatner. Actually, it's just called Free Enterprise, The Wrath of Shatner. We wouldn't put a 2 in it. We never did, but I would like that. I really would. Sam Whiskey says the Discovery ship from Star Trek is a copy of the Invaders ship from the 1962 TV show Fireball XL5, episode 34, The Firefighters. Well, Sam, I don't know if that's true. Of course, for those of you who don't know, the Star Trek, the Discovery ship is actually based on artwork that was done by Ralph McQuarrie for a mid-70s Star Trek film that Philip Kaufman, who directed Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Right Stuff. Philip Kaufman was going to direct a film called Planet of the Titans, a Star Trek movie called Planet of the Titans. It went a long way. And Ken Adam, the great production designer, worked on a lot of James Bond movies and worked for Stanley Kubrick. Dr. Strangelove was a Ken Adam designed film. He was production designing Planet of the Titans, and Ralph McQuarrie did drawings of that Enterprise. The Enterprise from Discovery is based on those drawings. That said, I wouldn't put it past Ralph McQuarrie or Ken Adam as they might have seen that Fireball XL5 episode. Again, Jerry Anderson, he made Fireball XL5. That was a Super Marionation show he made after Supercar and before Stingray. So, and I love Fireball XL5. I don't remember that episode. I'd have to go check that out, but that could very well be. That would not surprise me in the least. So, very interesting. Jordy54 says, support creators like Rob, hit the like button. Yes, I always forget to tell people, although Detective Jim, one of our great moderators, always tells people, hit the like button, subscribe if you want. That helps me out. By the way, I was thinking about Detective Jim. Detective Jim was an actual detective. He was real police. He's a detective, police detective. I say police because that's what they said in The Wire. It sounded like that's an authentic thing to say, that, cops in Baltimore said that was good police work or whatever. I like that. There is a great new Netflix series that just dropped called Unbelievable. Now, before anyone, I get it. There's a lot of social justice going on in Unbelievable. I understand. But basically, it's based on a true story about the case of a serial rapist. And I thought it was amazing. And what I really liked about it was, look, I love stories about corrupt cops. But I also love stories about cops in general. And, if you think about it, there are go-to modern, you can always tell police stories. Any story with police can be, I think, inherently interesting because they always become mythic. They're immediately stories about good and evil. And the stories of police officers have always fascinated me ever since I was a little kid. I've often thought that being a detective, I'm always endlessly fascinated by the depths of human behavior, the blackness of the human heart. And I say blackness, I mean the dark heart, the heart of darkness, like Joseph Conrad said. And but I've always admired police as well. And I think with everything that happens, it's nice to watch a police procedural like Unbelievable, where you see two very capable female police detectives going about the business of doing crack police work. I really, really liked it. And as a police procedural goes, I really enjoyed Unbelievable, based on a true story, very unfortunate true story, but I can't recommend it highly enough. It's, as I said, I know it's based on a true story, but those two female cops, one of them is played by Toni Collette. It's sort of a cross between Mindhunter and Cagney and Lacey. I'm like, I want to see a weekly show or a series with these same characters. They would never do that, but I would love to see that. So check that out. Check that Unbelievable. It is unbelievable. It's a great, great, great show, and I quite enjoyed it. Loquacious Primate is here. Loquacious Primate asks, any thoughts on Aeneas Abedin's loss to CBS over the plagiarism lawsuit about Discovery taking elements from his video game? For those of you who don't know, Aeneas Abedin is a man who created the Tardigrades video game. It was a video game that was available online that had many similarities to what came up in Star Trek Discovery. I tweeted out the judge ruled against him yesterday. It was basically thrown out. I read the entire judge's decision. And again, it was a case where the judge obviously was not a Star Trek fan, did not play video games, and really didn't understand. I thought the case had a lot of merit because, as many people know, as I have shared, the original conception of Star Trek Discovery, Brian Fuller's original conception, one of the crew members of the Discovery was Ephraim, the tardigrade character. He was a Starfleet officer. He worked with Stamets in engineering. He was described in one of the original outlines for the various episodes as having a Chewbacca-like relationship with Stamets. He was a character. He was an ongoing part of the crew. It was decided that it would be too expensive because he would have to be rendered in CG. And after what the final budgets of those episodes turned out to be, why not just go ahead and have done it? Well, it was clear to me that when the show was retooled and they created all that stupid ridiculousness like the spore drive, the idea of the tardigrade was morphed into something else. And I think it was quite obvious to me, if you drilled down what happened, once they took all of the outlines, I mean, they turned the whole idea of spores and fungus and all that was used as a terraforming device, which makes sense if you understand the mycelial network and how fungus works or fungi works, mushrooms and all that. And the whole Paul Stamets, the idea that it's a real person, the character of Stamets was based on a real guy, and it was all about terraforming in Brian Fuller's conception of the show. And when they came in and they changed everything to make it more theirs, when Alex Kurtzman could earn his and Akiva Goldsman could earn their keep, they had to take these elements and change them around and make them theirs. So somebody does, a cursory glimpse of, they punch in tardigrade, what shows up that video game. And, if you have you think, tardigrades, they kind of look like the shrimp-like guild navigators from Dune. It's not hard. Anybody who has a creative bone and understands how these ideas work, and when you're developing things, you can draw a line directly from the original version of the character Ephraim, who was the tardigrade character on the Discovery. When they wanted to change that and change Brian Fuller's original conception, there is a direct line that you can draw to Anais Abedin's game. It was just a Google search. And they're like, we'll change it more into this. Now, does that mean they directly ripped him off? Well, I don't think necessarily that they did. The idea of the tardigrade came about because I'm sure Brian Fuller, like many of us, saw that water bear video that went around the internet. That's where a lot of great, you watch these, look how nature is, and here's a water bear. So I think for sure they utilized all of those ideas that Anas, I guess it's Anas, his name's Anas Abedin. It's no doubt in my mind, but what it did was it was a bastardization of the original idea of the tardigrade that was there from the beginning. And he lost the suit. Very difficult to prove, but I think he was, in fact, they used his ideas. Whether they plagiarized him, I think they basically, somebody stopped on his website and said, we can do all of these things combined with the ideas of the guild navigators by somebody who clearly never read the book and only saw the movie. And both of those things led to the spore drive and the tardigrade, as we saw in Discovery, which is another reason to hate Star Trek Discovery, at least for me. Alexander Wilson is back with another very generous super chat. Thank you, sir, for supporting the channel. It was from a large organization that does international development aid for the federal government. They didn't hire 125 black applicants, but hired less qualified white people for the same positions. They started a diversity program soon after. You see, I am a meritocratist. I really am. I am a meritocratist. I believe that I don't care what color you are, what belief system, what deity you believe in, what your sexuality is. I don't care. What you want, especially if you work in Hollywood, is you want the best people for the job because there's too much money at stake. Now, the counter argument to that, which I understand, is there's a lot of people, because of their economic, mostly their economic, but also their ethnicities, that haven't had the opportunities because of who they are that would even allow them to get into a position where they could be considered for something. Very true. Very true. And I think that look, there's a lot of people that don't understand that they can even go into certain fields. They didn't understand going to the arts was an option. And if you grew up in you poor, or you grow up as a minority, you certainly do not have the opportunities that others say that come from better ethnic backgrounds, or not better ethnic, better economic backgrounds, where you grow up with more money, or you grow up with more of a majority. If you're part of more of an ethnic majority, there's no doubt that you have more opportunities than people who are poorer and who come from an ethnic minority. That is absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I think that's where diversity comes into play. What we really want is we want opportunities. We want equal opportunities for everybody. We want everybody to have opportunities to go and be and do what they want to do and be. And we want to give them those opportunities where they themselves can be able to be all they can be, to steal a phrase from the military. Now, what I disagree with is, at the end of the day, just giving people jobs based on something, and whether it's with ethnicity or economic background. People shouldn't be just given jobs if they're less qualified, because that doesn't do any good to anyone, and the job at hand is going to suffer. You can't have, if the job at hand suffers, if it's more important to get people of certain ethnicities or certain sexualities or certain economic backgrounds or whatever, if it's more important to hire those people instead of doing a good job, I think there's a problem. What we need to do is we've got to get people need to have opportunities way before that. And we need that. So in a way, in my mind, that's what's really important, is we need to start thinking about diversity, and we need to start thinking about getting people of all sorts, of all shapes, sizes, colors, creeds, belief systems. We got to get them involved from a very early age, and get them involved when they're young. And when it comes down to hiring people to get the job done, I think hiring people simply because of diversity, it just doesn't work ultimately. But we definitely need diversity programs. We need to get people. And also, I'm not just saying that if you're poor and white, and you're white, because we have a white majority so far in this country. Anybody who's economically challenged, if you're from poor communities, it doesn't matter what color you are, you're not getting the kind of education that you deserve. And that's what we need to do in this country. We need education, and we need opportunity for everybody. So we can pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, and everybody needs to be helped, and everybody needs a leg up when they can. And as Alexander pointed out, I mean, everybody wants to, we all want things to be, we all want to help everybody. That absolutely should be done. But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want anyone on a movie set where literally every single second is costing money. If a diversity hire is going to be mandated rather than the person that I need in a position to get my job done, if I have a film, if my 12-hour shoot day is compromised in any way, shape, or form because I don't have the quality of person that I want to hire, it doesn't work. Because all the way down the line, it's more detrimental to the project at hand. And at the end of the day, when I'm in charge of getting a movie made, I don't care who, I don't care what color somebody is, I don't care what they believe, I don't care who they sleep with. I need the best person in the position to get the job done for that day. That's it, period. Because there's too much money at stake. Now, what I believe in is let's get more people in positions where they can be considered to be hired for those positions. That's what I need. We need more. And that's across the board in this country. We need to start thinking about education and healthcare as a national security issue. I don't understand why why are our schools, if you want to, why are not our schools thought of as the first part of the military? Why are we not providing great lunches and great educations, great schools, great arts programs, great musical programs? Why are we not making our schools the best schools in the world that provide more opportunities and more broad-based education than anywhere else on this planet? Because you know what? Wouldn't you want those kind of people in the military? A highly educated, very healthy population is the very beginning of greatness for everybody. And why we are not throwing as much money at schools as we throw at the military, I do not understand. Why our teachers aren't some of the most highly regarded people. They're all senseis. That's how we should think about them. Why they're not, I don't get it. Never will understand. Man Mountain Gherkin 23 says, quick follow-up. I am a Christian hipster, so I enjoy movies with sex, violence, and swearing. I get more work about social justice issues. Well, you know, I mean, here's the thing. I like movies with sex, violence, and swearing in them, but I don't like gratuitous sex, violence, and swearing. What I want, again, great characters and a great story. If there's sex, violence, and swearing, like Killer Joe, William Friedkin's Killer Joe, that's a really rough movie that has sex, violence, and swearing in it. I think it's a great movie, but because it was written based on a play by Tracy Letts, or maybe it wasn't based on a play like Bug was, but Tracy Letts wrote it. I think it's that's what I want to see. Michael Avalotis says, Ad Astra is kind of like Apocalypse Now in space. No Playboy bunnies. Sorry. By the way, the re-release of Apocalypse Now removed the bunny sex scene in the helicopter. Well, that was, of course, Apocalypse Now Redux, where that sex scene was. The original, it's not in the original theatrical version of Apocalypse Now. I think I still prefer the original theatrical version, but I like Final Cut a lot better than I like Redux. By the way, you know, I only read one letter today. I've got some great letters. And let's see. I think this is a very funny letter. Franz Mohart writes in. Franz M has written a funny letter. He's written some good letters in the past. He's a longtime member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. He says, greetings, Robert. My top 5 so bad it's good movies. Once in a while, a work turns out to be so bad it creates a disruption in the badness continuum and wraps right around to good. Whatever the reason, a truly horrid piece of work can become an unintentional riot and even get its own fandom for its lack of quality. A so bad it's good movie is that so bad you can't suspend your disbelief enough not to laugh at it, so you watch it just to riff on it and laugh at it. Keep in mind that even when something is so bad it's good, it's still bad. For all entries on this list, there should be an almost unanimous opinion that they fail entirely at having the sort of appeal they intended. Far less unanimous will be the opinion that they have a sort of appeal that is unintentional. Number 1, Anaconda. Jennifer Lopez is literally being hunted by a huge, thick snake. The puns start with Sir Mix-a-Lot, and it's downhill from there. Based on an absurd premise that John Voight is a professional snake hunter. What? And he kidnaps documentarians to help him locate the world's largest anaconda. Why? By using them as live bait. Sure, okay. Nothing in this movie makes sense, and it is glorious. 2, Battlefield Earth. Set in the year 3000, a millennium after Cyclo-Master Race invades Earth and enslaves humanity, this has John Travolta as a 10-foot-tall alien who gets around in dreadlocks, nose plugs, and kiss boots. Even more over-the-top is his performance, which is all muha-ha-ing and an almost Shakespearean declamation of evil. Barry Pepper's terrible, too, bringing Christian Bale levels of intensity to his cave warrior. What also makes this badly watchable is that director Roger Christian shoots every scene on a weird askew angle. Yeah, I know. By the way, I think it was 1982. I bought Battlefield Earth and read it cover to cover when it first came out because L. Ron Hubbard was a golden age science fiction writer. And then when I was in my honors class in high school discussing, I was taking a class called Utopia. I brought in Scientologists to my public school to speak to the class. Oh, number three is a favorite. If you guys have never seen Black Devil Doll from Hell, it's a movie that came out in 1984 and it was shot on VHS. Black Devil Doll from Hell. This is a no-budget African-American fare about a virginal church-going woman who buys a cursed ventriloquist's dummy that wants to have sex with her. Did I mention that the doll wants to have sex with her? Did I mention that the doll does have sex with her and she likes it? The lowlights also include a Super Mario Brothers-esque Casio keyboard score and a 7-minute opening credits scene, plus close-ups of the puppet's fully functional tongue covered in what looks like vanilla soft serve ice cream. Okay, Black Devil Doll from Hell is real. And the Black Devil Doll from Hell was designed to, I kid you not, was designed to resemble Rick James. It's a good one. That's a good one, Franz. People Toys, number 4. This is exactly that movie that Tarantino, Rodriguez, Roth, Zombie, and Wright were parroting in Grindhouse. It's that dirty, super low-budget 70s drive-in film that is so stuck in the culture of the 70s that it's damn near lovable. The execution is poor, the deaths are ridiculous, and you have a young Leif Garrett killing adults before he was the Justin Bieber of his generation. All attempts at being artistic are tasking and laughable. There's a death in slow motion that is incomprehensible and goes on forever. I have never seen People Toys, but if Leif Garrett's in it, I'm in. Is it as good as Skateboard? Because, is anything? 5, Trolls 2. The film starred an unknown and hypnotically strange group of Utah non-actors and does not contain any trolls at all. No, the beasts of the perfect B-movie are actually vegetarian shape-shifting goblins whose cuisine of choice is humans who've been turned into plants. The joy of this movie is that neither the crew nor the cast is able to convey anything resembling real human interactions, reactions, or emotions at any time during the film. The result is 94 minutes of aliens pretending to be humans, pretending to be in a movie where they pretend to be threatened by other aliens, pretending to be goblins. I know, it's a classic. Everyone knows it. Everyone loves it. So, yeah, thank you for that, Franz. I appreciate that. Here's another one from our old friend Paul in Long Beach. Where you been, Paul? How you been doing? This is another letter from the great Paul in Long Beach. Sorry, Rob, I missed a few shows this week. On Breakaway Day, Comet TV was having a Space 1999 marathon. It was a tough choice, my friend. I could listen to you extol the genius of Jerry Anderson, or I could watch Martin Landau do it in his own subtle fashion. Actually, it wasn't a difficult choice at all. I don't blame you, sir. Tuesday at Robservations Showtime, the same cable channel had Richard Burton and John Hurt in 1984. So many options. Terrible Behavior in the Cinema or Big Brother. I like 1984. It's depressing, but I liked it. In between, my wife and I have flown to the East Coast for a family wedding. So I'm writing from South Jersey and headed to Long Island for a weekend of festivities. I've been pondering the multitude of choice recently, the basic theory being, when is too much too much? My Robservations moment came on my JetBlue flight across America. I just can't keep up anymore, nor do I care to. We flew on a red-eye. When we reached cruising altitude, I had some work to finish. Anna turned on Rocket Man, and the lady seated on the window turned on Aladdin. So, an hour or so into the flight with Anna and her neighbor snoozing, I took a restroom break. Seated toward the front of the plane, I purposefully walked to the rear, mostly to regard what other passengers were viewing. To no surprise, everything was on. ESPN, some cooking show, the Weather Channel, Dark Phoenix, Weather Channel, Dark Phoenix, Bohemian Rhapsody. Even the Flight Tracker channel was prevalent. Not prevalent, it's prevalent. Seated once again, I waded into all the options available. Should I request Clerks on JetBlue? It's an option after all. Make no mistake, I enjoy my satellite provider. If I gave two hoots about Krypton or Pennyworth, then they are all easily available. We are a sporting family, so Yankee baseball and the NFL are must-haves. To the gentleman whom attempted to insult golfers, just don't. I heard a rumor that the matriarch of this podcast has all rights to hunt you down for spontaneous combustion. Probably just a rumor, though. My mom will love that. As the Beatles sang, it's all too much. A few weeks ago on the John Campea show, somehow TCM came up as a topic. John admitted he had no idea that Turner Classic Movies even existed as a television station. I sat at my desk, slack-jawed. I did too. Most of the world hasn't unplugged yet, and the a la carte options are becoming a plethora of blandness. Here's my count. HBO Max, Disney Plus, Netflix, CBS All Access, Amazon Prime Video, Peacock, NBC, their new streaming service, Apple TV, Hulu, ESPN, Stars, Showtime Now, HBO Now, the WWE Network, YouTube TV, AT&T TV Now, Sling TV, DAZN, the Criterion Channel, Shudder, Vudu, Hallmark, PlayStation View, Philo TV, Pluto TV, NBA League Pass, NBA or NFL season ticket, Sunday ticket, MLB at Bat, BET. If you were able to recite that list in one breath, I was not. Congratulations, give yourself a cookie. Why? Because I didn't even mention Crackle, Hopster, or Crunchyroll, whatever the hell kind of entertainment they provide. Anime, man. Come on, anime is on Crunchyroll. Ditch cable, they said. Save some money, they said. I've dropped CBS already, Rob. I could care less for Modern Trek. Twilight Zone was so disappointing. I have no confidence for The Stand. By the way, the original Stand miniseries comes out on Blu-ray next week. Yes, it does. As I've said before, there's really nothing to complain about. Never in my youth could I imagine that practically everything I wanted was a few clicks away. Therefore, since these streaming services are now willing to purchase practically everything, I suggest we begin pitching together. I can think of two projects right this second. Fairy Tales, the story of Captain Brad and his wacky crew as they provide fun and safe public transportation around the Puget Sound. It's Wings on a Ferry Boat. By the way, Captain Brad already knows that. The slightly off but secretly brilliant engineer, the sassy waitress, and the grumpy cook. They'll take no gruff from anybody. The goofy folks whom secure and watch the car park, playing poker and rolling dice during the between destinations. I'm not kidding here, Rob. Brad's idea would work, and you know it. Oh, you knew that Brad said it. I think Brad's idea, I think making a show on a ferry is hilarious because for a 30-minute sitcom, it's a 30-minute ferry ride to Bremerton or whatever. I think it'd be great. Western Washington ferries are awesome venues to shoot on. I mean, they're great to shoot on. I think it's a great idea. I'm not kidding here, Rob. Brad's idea would work, and you know it. And Amazon should make it because you know what? We could have people from Amazon headquarters come on every episode. I politely won't reveal my second because it's something I've wanted to get off the ground for a bit, and you never want someone to borrow your ideas just like I did to Captain Brad. Don't worry, Brad. When we sell this to CBS, you'll be there. After all, if they'll buy magic mushrooms in space, Fairy Tales for half the price is a cinch. Paul. You know, you could do Fairy Tales. It could be a sitcom, and you could cross it with Touched by an Angel, where within 30 minutes, somebody on that ferry crossing, not only do you have the mirth-filled antics of a Western Washington ferry crew, but you also could have some kind of angelic presence like Della Reese or whatever help somebody with their life. I think Touched by an Angel, that's why Fairy Tales, there's literally a fairy godmother on the ferry ship, and you get the mirth-filled antics of Artie Deco, of the crew. I'm in. Captain Brad can certainly hook us up with people that we know. We could probably just shoot a pilot ourselves on one of Captain Brad's boats. He would let us do it. What's he going to do? Chef DeMac is back. I know I'm bringing up Stephen Romano again. Did you know he wrote the novelization for the movie Black Devil Doll from Hell? No way. Okay, for those of you who don't know who Stephen Romano is, Stephen Romano did a coffee table book of movie posters that he created for movies that don't exist. And we used him when I was producing the movie The Hills Run Red. Yes, I produced a horror movie called The Hills Run Red, which maybe one day I'm not saying it's going to happen, but maybe one day The Hills Run Red could be out on Blu-ray. I'm not saying it's going to happen anytime soon, but one never knows. So this movie I produced, The Hills Run Red, used Stephen Romano, and we used his work in the film. Stephen Romano also produced, get this, produced all the special features for the Shout Factory Blu-ray of Star Crash. My beloved Star Crash. How cool is Stephen Romano? Pretty effing cool. The fact that I've now learned that he wrote the novelization for the movie Black Devil Doll from Hell. If there's any movie novelization I need to now get the Black Devil Doll from Hell novelization. God love Stephen Romano, Chef. Why am I not? It's weird because DeMac, Chef DeMac, he's dumb. Like, you are the Mac, Chef DeMac. Now that I get it, I see it. I think you should always bring up Stephen Romano because he's awesome. There's never a time when you shouldn't bring up Stephen Romano. The man is a Renaissance man. The man is amazing. By the way, once again, thanks for supporting the channel. I very much appreciate that. So yeah, Paul in Long Beach. I'm going to read this one. People might think that I read all of Jeffrey Mao's letters. I don't. But Jeffrey Mao wrote this letter, and it's about Carnival Row. So for those of you who don't know, the new Amazon show Carnival Row was actually based on a speculative screenplay, meaning a screenplay that was written. It was an original script that somebody wrote. Well, the person who wrote the script, A Killing on Carnival Row, I want to say almost 20 years ago, was a man named Travis Beacham. Travis Beacham is near and dear to my heart because he also wrote Pacific Rim, which was also a spec script. But Travis Beacham wrote this, A Killing on Carnival Row, which has now become the new Amazon series Carnival Row that he co-created with Renee Echeverria. That if you're a Star Trek fan or a 4400 fan, you recognize Renee's name. He was one of the great writers on Star Trek The Next Generation. And he and Travis Beacham took his script, his original screenplay, and turned it into the series Carnival Row, which I quite liked. So this letter comes from Jeffrey Mao. Hi, Rob. I'm really dumping the letters on you recently, but there's just so much that I wanted to discuss with you in the Post-Geek Singularity, so I couldn't hold back. As a warning, I will be writing a spoiler review of Carnival Row, so I don't know how you want to handle spoilers, but I can't discuss the show without spoilers, so please deal with it and how you and the Honorable Mike see fit. I'm just going to read this until there's a spoiler and I don't want to share it. But as I said, I will be talking about Carnival Row. I'm not going to write a formal or informal review, as this will not be a point-for-point analysis with a final grade at the end. I'm going to write about things that I liked, things that I didn't like, and everything in between. So obviously from the start, this series has everything for us geeks to sink our teeth into. It has a period setting, it has fantastic creatures, complicated backstories, amazing makeup and effects, and enough gore and sex to keep those of us who like that satisfied. With regard to the sex, I was happy that most of it, actually quite a bit of it, was very tasteful, well done, and appropriate to the story points they were trying to make. The one point that was brought up that was sort of a sexual nature that I really didn't like was the suggestion that Vignette and Tourmaline had a lesbian relationship. Okay, I'll never turn down a hot fairy. I'll never turn on hot fairy lesbian action any more than the next guy. But come on, you can't tease that and never come back to it. You know what? I'm going to say I liked the fact that they showed that she had a same-sex relationship, and yet they were first and foremost friends, but they loved each other. I thought that actually was very relevant to the show, and I did enjoy it. In fact, when I saw that and saw when in the series it was occurring, I knew that the writers weren't going back to it. And I guess that in the end, they established that Tourmaline essentially gives up on any kind of relationship with Vignette, lets her go off with Philo at the train station. But you can see that kind of look of regret on her face. I still don't think they handled it as well as they could have. And I think that's down to pacing. I felt like they should have had maybe 2 or 3 more episodes for loose end tying, like to close off the Philo landlady thing, because she sticks her neck out to go back on her statement. Philo denies it, then nothing happens with that again. Okay, I'm not going to read a lot of this because I thought your letter was great, but I'm going to get to the end. Regardless, I had with the twists and turns and the predictability, I still enjoyed this series for its interesting melding of genres. It'll be interesting to see where things go next season. It's not a show that I'm now dying for the next season to come. I'm not going to anticipate it like I have for shows in the past, but the next season is set up pretty well and also open enough that they can go off in a number of different directions. I would like to see the mythology and background of the world explored a bit more. From what I saw and from what I wrote in a previous letter that must have gotten lost in the mail, the mythology seems a bit derivative, a mishmash of Greco-Roman influences. You have no sign of Christianity, although its proxy religion worshipping a figure called the Martyr looks awfully similar. But then you get to have biblical names like Jonah, a ship called the Janus. It's possible we'll get more of the Pact as well. I have some suspicion that they'll intercede somehow. Well, that's all I can think of and not end up writing a 4-page letter. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Well, Jeff, having read the script, I knew a lot of this. I really liked Carnival Row. That said, I thought it was a little all over the place, and the pacing was a little skewed, and they spent a little too much time with one particular storyline and not enough on Vignette and Philo. But I found myself really enjoying it for the most part, despite the shortcomings the show has. I dug it. I highly recommend Carnival Row to anybody who likes that sort of thing, and I really enjoyed it. I really did, and I want to thank you for writing in about it, Jeff. I always like getting your letters. But yeah, I love this letter too. I want to read this letter too. This letter comes from Regina Cruz. I don't think Regina Cruz has written a letter before. Dear Robert, or should I say, dear Master of Fun and Wonder, you can say that. First of all, I just wanted to express limitless gratitude for all the phenomenal content you provide on your YouTube channel, The Burnettwork. It is such a joy to hear you expound upon your fascinating and insightful opinions and views on a myriad of subjects. It's also a delight to listen to you declaim a plenitude of articulate, thought-provoking letters provided to you by your fabulous imagination connoisseurs, members of your esteemed Post-Geek Singularity community. It is such a privilege to have found a community where people may engage in civil discourse, perhaps at times partaking in expostulation or disputation, but always doing so in a very respectful and honorable manner. Kudos to you, gatekeeper of verisimilitude, for creating such a sublime platform for us like-minded souls to express ourselves and reveal the musings, conceptualizations, and formulations of our science fiction saturated minds. My roommate and I first discovered you by watching John Campea and always found the depth and breadth of your knowledge to be quite impressive, staggering, and even mentally breathtaking. I don't know about that, but thank you very much. My roommate and I were happy to discover how you cover topics so much more extensively and thoroughly on your own channel, so much so that I enjoy watching your videos and live streams as much as those of the John Campea show for different reasons. My roommate totally loves your channel very much as well. He's a complete geek and owns almost every single episode of Doctor Who, and I mean all the way back to the first Doctor. I myself am no stranger to geekdom, and I'm heavily into science fiction, genre cinema, TV shows, Marvel and the DCEU movies, and fantasy. My two favorite TV shows of all time are The Magicians and Being Human. Magicians is really good. My roommate went to film school, and I have a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics. I also have a strong propensity for theoretical physics, quantum physics, and metaphysics, and I am an avid autodidact in these three fields. I must say that I'm also an enthusiastic fan of Willow Yang. She does such an admirable and eloquent job of representing the demographic of the geeky constituent of the female Asian community, of which I am also a member. I've been lurking on your channel for a few weeks now, and I was shy to write in, but I felt strongly compelled to do so when you addressed the whole plan to storm Area 51. I listened to your and Willow's thoughts on the possibility of humans being in contact with extraterrestrials. You both raised many excellent, well-reasoned, and cogent points for consideration. I think you ruminated that it would be pointless for aliens to contact us if they were so much more highly advanced technologically than we were. I mean, why would they possibly be interested in insignificant beings like us? What could we possibly offer them from an intellectual, cultural, social, scientific, or spiritual metaphysical standpoint? Those are fine questions. I heard it posited, however, that once we employed the use of the atomic bomb, extraterrestrial beings took notice of us, or perhaps we garnered more attention from them than before. The setting off of those bombs purportedly had a detrimental effect, not only on our planet, our environment, and the biological entities within near proximity, but also on other dimensions and worlds, which are inhabited by alien life forms. If you think about it, the timeline seems to be plausible, as the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki took place in 1945, and the Roswell incident occurred in 1947. To address the improbability of aliens being able to reach our planet within a reasonably short period of time, there are scientific theories and explanations that convey how it is possible. In theoretical physics, or at least within certain factions of the theoretical physics community, there's a theory that time and space are merely illusory elements of reality. The following article, posted in the Scientific American website, addresses the notion that space may not be what our senses tell us. As for the illusory nature of time, Einstein himself said, "The dividing line between past, present, and future is an illusion." Yes, these are quite mind-bending concepts. There is the idea that in order to traverse across the extremely long distances, what is required is not the movement across vast expanses of space, but rather the intentional modulation or purposeful variation of the frequency of one's own level of energetic vibration. In one essay provided by a professed alien, a Tagatian Pleiadian, it's not Sheen because it's a Tagatian Pleiadian, I guess a Tagatian from Pleiades. It is written, "In Stellar Navigation 1, I described how we navigate using a frequency map and not a locations map. In a frequency map, what is important is the relationship between the given specific frequencies that can be taken as destinations or as locations, and not concepts like distance and directional placement as would be in a traditional map. I think it's such a super cool idea that we may be able to travel anywhere in the universe just by shifting the frequency of our level of vibration. I believe that there is merit to this concept that we find ourselves attracting to us people and things of a similar vibration. For example, wouldn't you agree that you are, in fact, a vibrational match to, say, Willow Yang, John Campea, Aaron Cummings, Chris Carr, etc., and all the other brilliant and wonderful people who populate your world? That's interesting, actually. Indeed, the great Nikola Tesla, the scientists whom many credit for ultimately being responsible for 80% of our most modern state-of-the-art technologies, stated that everything is predicated on energy, frequency, and vibration. If you would like to do a deep dive into concepts such as this one, I highly recommend the channel Cosmic Agency. The YouTuber of that channel, Gozia, claims to be in contact with an alien named Swaru, a Pleiadian from Era. A Pleiadian from Era Tagata within the solar system of Pleiades. Or Pleiades. I know all of this sounds far-fetched, but you may be amazed at how sound the science and information they provide on this channel seems to be. In fact, Dale Harder, an ex-NASA engineer, participates on this channel from time to time and lends the channel credibility. I totally resonate with most of the ideas they put forth. If you do decide to check out this channel, please keep an open mind. If you use your own power of discernment, you will be able to assess for yourself whether or not the material they present has verisimilitude. I, for one, am rather convinced about the veracity of the information presented. My faculties of ratiocination are sufficiently satisfied to acknowledge that the channel Cosmic Agency is most likely a credible one. For the time being, given how seemingly fantastical these ideas I am presenting in this letter are, it may be best to refrain from sharing the contents of this letter with other members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. Are you kidding me? It's possible that most may not be open-minded enough to give the channel Cosmic Agency a fair chance. Perhaps I am mistaken, but it's probably better to play it safe for now. I just really wanted to let you know about Cosmic Agency because I think you would find at least some modicum of value to this channel, and perhaps it may even rock your world a little bit, depending on how believable you find it to be. It may be that you're predisposed to not be convinced of the authenticity of the Cosmic Agency channel. If that is the case, then at least the channel may provide, at least from your perspective, prodigious amounts of amazing, mind-blowing, matrix-shattering science fiction. The beings that supply info and material to this channel are most certainly epic geniuses. Below are links that lead to the video you may want to ponder over the multitudinous moments of time at your leisure, of course. It's noteworthy how Gozia addresses the Prime Directive and its relationship with respect to disclosure of the existence of aliens in the second video. Obviously, those Pleiadians do not approach disclosure in a desultory fashion. I know that you are very busy, so if you are inclined and if you have the time, please feel free to let me know your thoughts about these videos and or perhaps the channel in general. Thank you so very much. Best regards, love, joy, and every good thing imaginable, Regina C. Well, Regina C., I have not seen the channel, but I love videos like this. As I've told everybody before, when I was a kid, I read every book I could find on strange phenomena, whether it was everything from spontaneous human combustion to the Bermuda Triangle. And of course, I loved stories about UFOs. But here's the thing. I'm totally open-minded. And clearly, I mean, I look at it this way. The available light that is surrounding human beings all the time, some of it we can't see. There are spectrums of light, whether it's ultraviolet light, that our ability to perceive just doesn't exist. Now, knowing that, and knowing that we are beings that are really our concepts, indeed our science and our physics, are all based on what we can prove, and through peer-reviewed analysis and repeatable experiments. But there are things clearly that we don't know about because they are beyond the bounds of our abilities to perceive. So knowing that there's stuff going on in our universe, probably all around us, that we cannot see, once you accept that as a fact, which it is a fact, then you're open-minded enough, and I think you should be open-minded enough to then make the leap and go, yeah, there's stuff in the universe, there's stuff all around us that we can't see happening. And a lot of that has been used in science fiction. And I think it's interesting. Like, let's just assume that you have a benevolent alien race, or indeed a federation of alien races, that in their minds, they would like to see beings such as mankind brought further along and not destroy ourselves. And hopefully, because I would assume beings like us, self-aware sentient beings that are somewhat evolved, are rather rare. So if you find it's like if you find a promising plant in the soil that's pretty or might have potential, maybe it could grow into some vine that will give you fruit that you can eat, you want to cultivate that. And if you were doing that, how would an alien civilization begin to cultivate a civilization like ours, especially a civilization that has things like social media? Definitely a science fiction concept is that maybe a cosmic agency channel. I'm not adverse to believing that some kind of, whether it's interdimensional beings on a different vibrational plane, let's just say entities that are much more highly evolved and know a lot more about the nature of the universe than we do. How would you begin to bring humanity along on this journey? Well, it would be a long process, because after studying humanity and understanding I don't think any alien race, by revealing itself, by showing up with 15-mile-long flying saucers over all of the Earth's cities, would be exactly the best thing for humanity. But what you'd have to do is, over the course of perhaps years, decades, or maybe even centuries, is slowly inject this knowledge, perhaps soften up a population, and put these ideas into a civilization over the course of many, I don't know how long it takes, but for a long time. And maybe with our social media world and things like YouTube, that's exactly what they needed. So I'm not against believing in these kinds of things, because there's all kinds of crazy science. I mean, you start studying quantum physics, things get weird. So I'm not, to be honest with you, Regina, I want to believe. I'm like Fox Mulder. I don't mind contemplating these things. And like you said, what's the harm in going to I like watching videos like this. And if the cosmic agency has some really interesting fodder to provide my crazy imagination and mind, then I'm all for it. I think that's a great thing. I don't have to believe, and like you said, even if you don't want to believe in it, it can be the basis of some really entertaining Matrix-esque like science fiction. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your letter. Really, if nothing else, it's interesting, isn't it? And Regina's letter will be up on, it's already up on the website. Please go to it, because all of the hyperlinks that she suggested are in the body of her letter. And we did put the links up on the Burnettwork.net website. So before writing off Regina completely, I think it's worth maybe delving into what she has to say. I certainly am going to. If nothing else, it should be interesting. I think it's great. And I want to thank you for writing in, and tell your roommate thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Here's another letter. I had to read this letter because it's about Star Trek the Motion Picture. And since I saw it in the theater on Wednesday night, why not? I'm still thinking about it. You know what? That's another thing. If people knew what I was thinking, I spend an inordinate amount of time actually thinking about Star Trek the Motion Picture. I know. So this one comes from Richard Green. Richard Green says, Rob, you spoke of the original Star Trek the Motion Picture and the shot of them going around the Enterprise, the many shots. Those shots made me want the model kit of the Enterprise. My family got it for me, and I built it with the LED lights and all. That shot made them some extra money in merchandise, I'm sure. Richard Green. I got to tell you, Richard, when Star Trek the Motion Picture opened in December 7th, or on December 7th of 1979, one of the great things about it was there was a ton of merchandise ready to go when it hit the screens. And that Christmas, AMT had a model kit, which came with lights in it, not LEDs, but it did come with lights of the refit Enterprise. And an amazing model. I don't know if you can see it. I'll tip it up, but right over there, that is my refit Enterprise, my Polar Lights 1/350 scale Enterprise. That's a 1/48 scale product Enterprise's diecast Eagle. You can't really see it, but there's a Millennium Falcon. There's an SR-71, and there is K's spinner from Blade Runner, and an Alien, and just artwork. There's a space battleship Yamato, or the Argo if you're a Star Blazers fan. Anyway, I am always the refit Enterprise is my favorite spaceship of all time, fictional spaceship of all time. You know, you got to love it. And I love hearing that you love it. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So thanks for writing in. I love it. Hey, Dieter Bastian's here. Dieter Bastian says, hey, Rob, physical media is still alive and kicking. The Midsummer Director's Cut will be released in the UK, and Hobbs and Shaw will get a 3D Blu-ray in Deutschland. Deutschland über alles. I want to tell you something, Dieter. You know what? Amazon Germany has been my friend on many occasions, and I will be visiting Amazon Germany to get that 3D blue disc of Hobbs and Shaw. Thank God for Europe, because if we didn't have Europe, I wouldn't have the Avengers Endgame 3D Blu-ray. I love getting my 3D Blu-rays. By the way, I have a 3D Blu-ray of The Last Emperor that was only released in Italy, which, hey, it was great. But Dieter, thanks. Appreciate thank you for helping out the channel, supporting the channel. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this now brings an end to Robservations, the show about something. Robservations number 227. I want to thank you for supporting the channel and being here on a Saturday. I also want to thank my great moderators, the Honorable Mayor Mike Bodden of Riverdale, Iowa, Detective Jim, and Greg Smith, who can build a house with his bare hands, and of course the Sheriff of Nottingham, Terry in the UK. Thank those moderators. They make the experience in the live chat. You know, one day I'm going to have somebody guest for me on the show, and I'm just going to live chat and stir shit up and see how long it takes me to get banned. I think that'd be pretty funny. Anyway, I want to thank my moderating staff for doing such a great job. I want to thank you, all of you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community, for supporting myself, supporting the channel, supporting all the work you do. Some of your money also goes to our websites, which is great. Well, website, which is great. And thank you for being an imagination connoisseur. I've got to record voices for Cousin Neil, who's making a Space Rob video game. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. Anybody, by the way, who's either a Patreon, I've told everybody to not support me on Patreon and move over to the website, but there's still people that do support me on Patreon. If you want to, you can. And if you're a Patreon supporter or you're a member of the Post-Geek Singularity community, a paying member, you can be a member for $1 a year at the website. You're all going to get to play test the Space Rob video game when it is available. Also, I want to mention that, yes, I do have T-shirts, and you can get T-shirts, which I always forget to tell people to go there, but they are at TeePublic, and TeePublic is where to go get them. As a matter of fact, you know what? Because people ask, I did post it yesterday, and I'll just put in a link. I'll put in a link right now. I'm getting the link. If you want to go get a Robservations shirt, you can. You can do that. And I'm going to send you the link right now. I like the shirts. And I have to say, T-shirts can suck, and they're only as good as the quality of the shirts. But I really like them. So here you go. I'm putting a link there. You can go get a T-shirt. But I like their hoodies. And you know what? To be honest, it's not like I make $2 a shirt. That's all. That's my margin. I didn't do it to make any money. I just did it to have cool swag, and it's kind of fun. And I'm going to start. Elizabeth has done some artwork. She did this one piece of art of these characters in her inimitable style. I'm going to make a shirt with her artwork on it that I call Imagination Connoisseurs. So I'm going to put that up there soon. There's a sale going on, so you can get those. They're cool, but the hoodies are great. And anyway, I want to say, as I end this chat, I want to say, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to everyone, thanks for writing letters. Send me more at theburnettwork.net. And as always, have a better day.